Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session on the universe of library technology. Today, we're going to explore how libraries have developed technologically, what they use today, how staff engage with those technologies, and even what the future might hold. Libraries have always been more than collections of books. They are institutions built to preserve, organize, and share human knowledge. Thousands of years ago, the earliest libraries recorded creation myths, census counts, and tax rolls on clay tablets or papyrus. Today, they are complex technological environments, deeply integrated with digital systems, online databases, and networked infrastructures. What's important to remember is that this evolution didn't happen overnight. Each technological shift, from the printing press to the internet, reshaped the way libraries operate and the services they provide. Think about the leap from handwritten manuscripts in medieval monasteries to open access journals available on your laptop in seconds. The difference is staggering, but both are part of the same long tradition, finding ways to preserve and distribute information. At the heart of this discussion is the idea of adaptation. Libraries don't simply adopt new tools, they adapt them to their mission. The introduction of classification systems in the 19th century was about more than efficiency. It was about democratizing access, giving everyone a way to navigate growing collections. Today's adoption of discovery platforms like Primo or Summon follows the same logic, making it easier for patrons to find what they need in a sea of information. So, when we talk about library technology in context, we are really talking about a continuum. Libraries have always been technological institutions. They create, adopt, and reshape tools not for their own sake, but to preserve knowledge and extend access to their communities. And as technology continues to change, libraries will continue to evolve with it. This outline gives us the roadmap for our discussion. We begin with the foundations of library technology and trace 10 key developments that shaped the profession. Then we shift to the present, what libraries use today, how staff engage with technology in different tasks, and what skills are most common. After that, the focus moves to patrons, the technologies they use most, and the devices they borrow. Finally, we end with aspirations for the future, the audiovisual timeline, catalogs and mark records, and lessons we can take from the survey. When we think about the role of libraries, we often picture shelves of books, quiet study spaces, and maybe a catalog system. But none of these things would exist without information technology in its broadest sense. And here it's important to step back and redefine what we mean by technology. Most people hear the word and immediately think of computers, servers, or smartphones. But in libraries, technology has always been more than electronics. It includes both the products people invent and the processes they design to handle information. A book classification system is as much a technology as a database. A rebinding process for damaged books is just as critical as an RFID scanner at checkout. The glue and the algorithm both belong in the same technological conversation. Think of the daily work of a library. Some tasks are invisible but essential: binding books so they last, labeling items consistently, or writing metadata for digital images. These are processes. Then there are products, shelving units, full text databases, and the mobile devices we loan to patrons. Together, these things form the infrastructure that makes a library usable. One way to understand this better is by looking at how technologies enter libraries. The first category includes technologies created specifically for libraries. Melville Dewey's decimal system, for example, wasn't invented for general society. It was designed to organize library materials. The card catalog, too, was a library specific invention that transformed how patrons accessed collections. Later, machine readable cataloging, or MARC, gave us the foundation for automated library systems and resource sharing. The second category involves technologies adapted for libraries. Here we see tools originally developed for other fields, like inventory management, reshaped into library management systems. Databases that once tracked business or scientific data were redesigned to store periodical citations and eventually full text articles. Adaptation is about taking a general purpose tool and molding it for library work. And finally, there are technologies brought into libraries. These are tools designed for the wider world that we simply adopt as they are. email systems, copiers, barcodes, RFID tags, and standard office software. Think about how critical email is in a modern library. It wasn't invented for us, but we couldn't function without it. Let me give you a practical snapshot. Imagine a student comes to the circulation desk. They search the catalog, which is powered by Mark. That's a technology created for libraries. The circulation system that checks the item out is adapted from broader inventory systems, and the actual checkout process uses RFID, which was developed for retail and supply chains and simply brought into our environment. That single interaction relies on all three categories of technology working seamlessly together. When we talk about the history of library technology, we're really talking about the history of humanity's efforts to manage information. Libraries themselves are a form of technology, built as systems to store, organize, and retrieve knowledge. Over the centuries, at least 10 major developments stand out, each changing not just libraries, but society's relationship with information. It all begins with writing and paper. Think about how fragile oral traditions are. One storyteller dies, and entire histories can vanish. Writing fixed knowledge, and paper made it portable, cheap, and replicable. Without it, libraries would never have become the repositories of culture that they are. Even those prehistoric cave paintings you may have seen in textbooks are early attempts at externalizing memory, a first step toward the libraries we know. Next comes the printing press. Johannes Gutenberg's movable type in Europe, along with earlier inventions in China, meant that ideas could travel faster than ever before. Before this, a monk might spend months hand copying a manuscript. After printing, thousands of copies could circulate in just a few weeks. This democratized access to knowledge, making it possible for libraries to expand from elite institutions into public services. But a growing flood of books created a new problem: how to organize them. That's where classification systems came in. Melville Dewey's system in 1876 was simple, subject-oriented, and highly adaptable. Suddenly, patrons could browse a shelf and move from one book to another in the same subject area. Classification didn't just organize collections, it made discovery possible. Closely tied to that was the card catalog. Imagine walking into a library without it. You'd be left scanning every shelf. The card catalog was the first real user-centered search tool. Patrons could look up a book by author, title, or subject without needing a librarian's memory to guide them. It was, in effect, the Google search box of the 19th and early 20th centuries. The next leap came in the 1960s with library systems and MARC records. Librarians teamed up with computer scientists to create the first automated systems, running on massive mainframes. Each item was represented by a MARC record, machine-readable metadata that allowed libraries to share cataloging work. MARC was transformative. It standardized description and made it possible for catalogs to scale in the digital age. Now we move into the computer era. Personal computers arrived in the 1980s, giving libraries unprecedented flexibility. No longer tied to a mainframe, they could run Office software, CD-ROM databases, and eventually internet connections. Libraries quickly went from one or two staff PCs to entire public computer labs, laying the foundation for today's digital services. Then came online searching. Starting in the 1970s, platforms like Dialog or LexisNexis let libraries tap into electronic resources far beyond their own shelves. In the beginning, these were expensive and complex, requiring trained librarians to act as search intermediaries. But over time, costs fell and interfaces improved, opening up end-user searching. Another major development was the arrival of audio-visual media. Video cassettes, CDs, DVDs, all of these expanded what a library collection could mean. For patrons, this was a huge win. Libraries were no longer just about books, but also about entertainment, education, and cultural media. For staff, it meant new challenges: theft prevention, format obsolescence, shelving design, and rights management. Of course, the true revolution was the internet. Over the past 25 years, it has transformed libraries into global access points. A student sitting in Chicago can pull up a journal article from Oxford in seconds. The linking of servers into networks has collapsed distance and reshaped how libraries deliver value. Today, services like proxy authentication, e-journal subscriptions, and digital reference are so embedded we barely think of them, but they're all made possible by that infrastructure. Finally, we arrive at where we are now, a society that requires technology. Patrons expect Wi-Fi, streaming access, and 24/7 online catalogs. They expect libraries to provide technology help, from email setup to ebook downloads. And critically, libraries serve as digital equalizers. For communities without broadband or devices, the library is the lifeline. In this way, technology isn't optional anymore. It's the core of library service. After walking through history, it's natural to ask, where are we now? What does technology in libraries look like today? The reality is that modern libraries are hybrid environments. They are both physical and digital, both traditional and cutting edge. Books and journals remain, but budgets increasingly tilt toward ebooks, databases, and streaming subscriptions. Shelves are still filled, but the true backbone of library service is now network infrastructure, authentication systems, and digital resource management. At the most visible level, patrons encounter front desk technologies like RFID self checkout stations, fine payment kiosks, or mobile scanning apps. These make circulation faster, reduce staff workload, and give patrons more independence. Many academic and public libraries report that self service has become the norm for basic transactions. Then there are the public facing discovery systems. If you've ever used tools like Ex Libris Primo, EBSCO Discovery Service, or OCLC WorldCat Discovery, you know how they integrate multiple catalogs and databases into a single search box. For patrons, this feels seamless, but under the hood, it is a sophisticated layering of metadata, subscription licenses, and authentication pathways. It's the modern evolution of the card catalog, but multiplied by thousands of databases. Behind the scenes, integrated library systems, ILS, and library services platforms, LSP, keep things running. These systems manage circulation, acquisitions, cataloging, serials management, and analytics. They are the staff dashboards that ensure materials, whether physical or digital, are trackable, discoverable, and usable. Equally important is infrastructure and security. Libraries must maintain stable Wi Fi, secure servers, firewalls, and digital authentication tools like Shibboleth or Open Athens. Without these, remote access to e journals and databases would collapse. And because so many patrons now connect off site, these systems are as critical as locks on the library's front door. Think of a practical example. A graduate student at CSU logs in from home at 11:30 at night. They enter their credentials and gain access to JSTOR, ProQuest, and Science Direct. That simple login represents thousands of dollars in licensed content, authenticated through proxy servers, tracked in usage statistics, and managed by library staff. To the student, it feels effortless. But in reality, it is the result of careful technological integration. We can also see this in collections. Where once libraries bought physical journals, today most license access to large digital bundles. Where once libraries bought DVD collections, now they subscribe to Canopy or Hoopla. The collection is no longer something you can walk through and touch. It is a network of agreements, contracts, and digital infrastructures. So, what are libraries using today? They are using systems that blend print with digital, physical with virtual, local with global. They are using tools that make access faster, cheaper, and more seamless. But most of all, they are using technology strategically, not to replace books, but to extend the mission of libraries into a digital society. To really understand the role of technology in libraries today, it helps to look at data about what staff are actually doing. One of the most comprehensive snapshots comes from the Neil Schumann Library Technology Companion Survey, conducted for the 2018 edition of John Burke's book. This survey asked library staff across different types of institutions to share which technologies they used regularly and which skills they relied on most heavily. The response was broad. Over 1,500 librarians and staff members participated, representing every US state, 9 Canadian provinces, and 21 other countries across 6 continents. This diversity is important because it shows that the results weren't just a reflection of big universities or urban public libraries. They captured the voices of school librarians, special librarians, state libraries, and even vendor partners. What did the survey find? The message is clear. Technology is not optional in librarianship. It is central to almost every role. For example, 94% reported using email daily. It remains the backbone of library communication, both internally and with patrons. 91% relied on word processing tools like Microsoft Word or Google Docs. From reports to LibGuides, documentation is everywhere. 86% used web browsers daily, whether for catalog access, publisher platforms, or reference services. 85% used spreadsheets, not just for budgets but also for circulation statistics, scheduling, and metadata management. 84% worked with library catalogs on the public side, helping patrons search collections. 83% conducted database searching, supporting research and reference services. What makes this more striking is that participants didn't just use one or two technologies. On average, each staff member reported regularly using 27 different technologies or skills. That shows just how multifaceted the work has become. A single librarian may switch between an Excel budget sheet, a proxy server login, a MARC record edit, and a Zoom meeting, all in the same day. The survey also revealed the breadth of roles staff occupy. Respondents often reported working across multiple task areas: reference, instruction, cataloging, circulation, outreach, collection development, and user experience. The average was 6 distinct areas per person. That means librarianship isn't narrow, it's interdisciplinary, and technology underpins all of it. Think of a real world example. Imagine a school librarian. In the morning, they're emailing teachers and updating an online reading list. At lunch, they're troubleshooting the catalog because a record isn't displaying properly. In the afternoon, they're teaching students how to search a database for a history project. That same librarian is also maintaining spreadsheets of circulation stats for an end-of-year report. This is not unusual, it is typical. What the survey tells us then is that librarianship is deeply technological at every level. The tools may change over time, from email to Slack, from Excel to cloud analytics, but the pattern remains. To serve patrons effectively, library workers must be fluent in a wide toolkit, constantly learning and adapting. One of the most revealing aspects of the Neil Schumann survey wasn't just which technologies library staff used, but in what context they used them. Respondents were asked to identify all the task areas they regularly worked in, and the results tell us a lot about the nature of modern librarianship. What stood out is how multifunctional the average library professional is. Most respondents didn't confine themselves to a single role. In fact, on average, they reported being active in 6 different task areas. That means a single staff member might be balancing responsibilities across reference services, instruction, cataloging, circulation, collection development, outreach, and user experience, sometimes all within the same week or even the same day. This diversity of tasks explains why librarians need such a broad technological toolkit. For instance, someone working in reference is constantly using databases, discovery tools, and citation managers. In instruction, they may be creating online tutorials, presenting with slideware, or managing a learning management system like Canvas or Blackboard. In cataloging, MARC records, integrated library systems, and metadata standards are central. For circulation, self-check systems, barcodes, and RFID dominate. And for outreach, social media platforms, design tools like Canva, or even podcasting equipment may come into play. Consider a real-world scenario. Picture a public librarian. In the morning, they're answering reference questions, helping someone find tax forms online. At midday, they're teaching a digital literacy workshop, showing seniors how to use tablets. Later, they're cataloging a new set of large print books. Before closing, they're hosting a community program, maybe a coding club for teens. 4 very different task areas, all requiring different technologies. This variety also underscores how fluid roles have become. In the past, you might have had rigid boundaries: catalogers in the back office, reference librarians at the desk, children's librarians in the story room. Today, technology has blurred those lines. Staff are expected to jump between tasks, and technology is what makes that possible. There's also a career insight here for you as graduate students. When you step into your first professional role, Don't expect to do only reference or only archives. You'll almost certainly be doing a mix, and the survey confirms that's the norm, not the exception. Your strength will come from your ability to move comfortably across these areas, using technology as the bridge. So the takeaway is this: librarianship is not about specialization in one tool or one function, it's about flexibility. Technology enables that flexibility, but it also demands it from us. The more task areas you can confidently work in, the more valuable you are to your library and to the communities you serve. When library staff were asked in the Neil Schumann survey which technologies they use most frequently, the answers paint a clear picture of what has become the everyday toolkit of librarianship. These are the essentials, the tools no librarian can avoid. At the top of the list is email. More than 94% of respondents said they use it daily. It may not feel exciting, but email remains the backbone of library communication. Answering patron questions, coordinating with faculty, contacting vendors, or sending policy updates to staff. Without reliable email, most library workflows would break down. Next is word processing software, with more than 91% reporting daily use. Microsoft Word, Google Docs, or similar tools are used for everything from drafting policies to writing instruction handouts and preparing grant applications. The simple act of formatting a LibGuide tutorial or documenting a procedure shows how central word processing is. Web browsers come next at 86%. They are the gateway to virtually everything: catalogs, databases, publisher platforms, electronic journals, cloud storage, and web based ILS dashboards. In a very real sense, the browser is the library's new reading room. Spreadsheets are another core tool, used by nearly 86% of staff. Think about what spreadsheets enable: managing budgets, analyzing usage statistics, scheduling staff, tracking acquisitions, and even organizing metadata before it's migrated into a system. Excel or Google Sheets may not be glamorous, but they are indispensable for turning raw data into decisions. Equally critical are library catalogs, used by 84% of respondents. Catalogs remain the backbone of access. Even though modern discovery layers may look slicker, the catalog's structured metadata is what underpins patron searches and circulation. Staff use catalogs constantly, not just to find items, but to update holdings, manage circulation, and correct records. Finally, library database searching was reported by 83% of respondents. This reflects how central reference and research support remain even in a digital first age. Librarians spend a huge portion of their time searching proprietary databases, guiding students through keyword strategies, or troubleshooting access issues. Beyond the core toolkit of email, word processors, catalogs, and databases, the survey also revealed a second layer of technologies that are nearly as widespread. These are not quite universal, but they are still used by a majority of library workers and are just as critical to daily operations. High on that list is cloud based storage, used by about 78% of respondents. Think of platforms like Google Drive, Dropbox, iCloud, or OneDrive. These have transformed how librarians collaborate, store documents, and share instructional materials. Instead of passing around USB drives or juggling multiple versions of a policy document, staff can work in real time across locations on the same file. For instruction librarians, cloud tools make it easy to create shared resource folders for students or faculty. For administrators, they provide a secure way to back up reports and data. Another area is printers. Around 77% of staff still use them regularly, and not just for internal work. Printing remains one of the top services patrons rely on libraries for: resumes, tax forms, travel documents, essays, and boarding passes. It may feel mundane, but in many communities, printing is the number one reason people walk in the door, and librarians become the tech support, troubleshooting everything from jammed paper to formatting errors. Presentation software like PowerPoint, Google Slides, or Prezi was used by 75% of respondents. This reflects how much of librarianship now involves instruction and outreach. Staff are expected to give workshops, orientation sessions, community presentations, and even conference talks. The ability to design clear, engaging slides is part of the modern librarian skill set. Ebooks are another area, with nearly 74% of staff reporting regular use. Staff don't just read ebooks, they help patrons access them, manage licenses, and navigate multiple vendor platforms like Overdrive, ProQuest eBook Central, or Hoopla. Each platform has its quirks, and part of the librarian's role is to make sense of them for the patron. Then there's the library management system, used by about 68% on the staff side. This is the engine of circulation, acquisitions, and cataloging. Staff dashboards allow librarians to check items in and out, manage holds, process invoices, and maintain accurate records. Other widely used skills include scanners and digitization tools, laptops, copyright knowledge, and teaching using technology. The survey also noted the rise of video conferencing tools, with Zoom, Teams, or WebEx becoming standard after 2018. This reflects the profession's growing role in remote instruction and virtual reference. When we shift our lens from staff to patrons, the survey results become even more revealing. They show us what technologies people actually come to the library for, and, in many cases, what they cannot access anywhere else. The most common need, perhaps unsurprisingly, is printing. It may seem basic, even old fashioned, but printing remains a top reason why people walk into libraries every day. Students print essays and assignments, job seekers print resumes and cover letters, travelers print boarding passes, families print school forms and tax documents. What's striking is that in a world where we talk about streaming media, artificial intelligence, and cloud storage, the humble printer is still at the center of library technology service, and librarians often double as IT support, unjamming printers, fixing paper feed issues, and guiding patrons through formatting problems. Right after printing comes database searching. Patrons need access to specialized resources that are too expensive to buy individually. Platforms like JSTOR, ProQuest, PubMed, or ERIC provide academic and professional content that patrons couldn't access without the library's subscriptions. Many patrons, especially students, need help navigating these databases, how to choose keywords, how to use Boolean logic, and how to evaluate results. For librarians, every reference interaction is both a teaching moment and a technology training session. Computing devices are another top area. Patrons frequently rely on library desktops, laptops, and tablets. In many communities, the library is the only free, safe, and reliable access point to a computer. Think of a public library computer lab on a weekday morning. People filling out job applications, updating resumes, applying for government benefits, or even just checking email. For these patrons, the library isn't just about information, it's about digital survival. The library catalog also continues to be a tool patrons need help with. Even though modern catalogs and discovery systems are much more user friendly than the old green screen opaque terminals, many users still struggle with searching effectively. Patrons often expect the catalog to behave like Google, and part of the librarian's role is to bridge that gap, explaining how subject headings work, how to filter results, and how to locate items physically in the collection. Email may seem trivial, but many patrons still require help setting up accounts, remembering passwords, or navigating web based platforms. In academic libraries, students frequently forget how to log into institutional email or how to forward important documents. In public libraries, staff often help seniors who are trying email for the first time, or immigrants who need an email account to apply for jobs or housing. Something as simple as setting up Gmail can be life changing. Finally, ebooks are an increasingly common request. Patrons want to borrow digital titles, but often find themselves wrestling with vendor platforms, device compatibility, or download errors. librarians step in to guide them through apps like Libby, Overdrive, or Hoopla. Sometimes this means spending 20 minutes just helping someone install an app and sign in, a small act that opens up an entire digital collection to them. Beyond helping patrons use in house tools like printers, databases, and catalogs, many libraries also circulate technology items for patrons to borrow. This is one of the most striking developments of the past decade. Libraries aren't just loaning books anymore, they're loaning devices. According to the survey, the most commonly circulated technology is the laptop. 40% of respondents identified laptops as their most popular or heavily used circulating item. For students without their own device, a borrowed laptop can mean the difference between completing an assignment on time or falling behind. In public libraries, laptops extend digital access to families who might not have a computer at home, allowing them to work from the comfort of their living room rather than relying on a crowded library computer lab. Close behind are Chromebooks and tablets. Chromebooks, in particular, have become popular because they're inexpensive, lightweight, and easy to maintain. For schools and public libraries, lending Chromebooks has proven to be an effective way to support homework, job searching, and digital literacy programs. Tablets, often iPads, are also widely circulated, especially for families with children who use them for reading apps, educational games, or streaming content. Other frequently circulated items include chargers and Wi Fi hotspots. Hotspots have become especially critical. For many patrons, broadband is too expensive or unavailable in their neighborhood. By checking out a library hotspot, a family can connect multiple devices to the internet at home for a week or even a month. During the pandemic, this service became a lifeline, allowing students to attend online classes and parents to work remotely. Some libraries have gone further, lending out a wide range of innovative tools: calculators for students in math, heavy courses, Roku sticks for streaming media, mini projectors for community presentations, even robots like Sphero for coding workshops. These items may seem unusual, but they reflect a larger truth. Libraries adapt their collections to meet the practical needs of their communities. If the community needs internet access, the library lends hotspots. If the community needs STEM support, the library lends robots. The survey didn't just ask what staff are using now, it also asked what they wish they could learn and what new technologies they'd like to see in their libraries. At the top of the list were coding and programming skills. Many respondents specifically mentioned Python, SQL, HTML, and CSS. This reflects a recognition that libraries are no longer just about managing books, they're about managing data. A librarian who can write a simple Python script or query a database in SQL can solve problems faster and open new possibilities for digital projects. Others wanted to learn video or audio editing, web design, or data visualization. These skills go beyond traditional librarianship, but they're increasingly useful for teaching, outreach, and digital scholarship. Imagine creating a podcast series from oral history archives or designing a dashboard that visualizes circulation trends. These are real opportunities librarians see on the horizon. When asked what technologies they'd most like added, 3D printing topped the list, followed closely by virtual reality and makerspaces. These are tools that position the library not just as a place to consume knowledge, but also to create it. A teen designing a 3D model, an adult exploring a VR history exhibit, or a community group using maker tools, these scenarios expand the definition of what a library can be. The underlying theme here is aspiration. Librarians want to keep learning, and they want their institutions to keep evolving. Technology is not seen as a threat, but as an opportunity to stay relevant, innovative, and deeply connected to community needs. The history of audiovisual media in libraries is a story of constant change and constant adaptation. Starting in the mid 20th century, each new format reshaped library collections, services, and even physical spaces. In 1948, the phonograph LP record became a staple of music collections. By the late 1950s, audiocassettes arrived, offering portability and easy recording. Then came VHS videocassettes in the 1970s. opening the door for libraries to lend films and educational programs on a massive scale. The 1980s brought compact discs and CD-ROMs, offering high-quality sound and access to reference databases. By the 1990s, DVDs and MP3s further expanded both entertainment and learning options, and in the 2000s, the shift accelerated. iPods, YouTube, Netflix, iPhones, Kindles, and iPads reshaped how people consumed media, pushing libraries into the world of streaming and mobile devices. By the late 1960s, libraries faced a major challenge. Collections were growing rapidly, and the traditional card catalog couldn't keep pace. At the same time, computers were becoming powerful enough to handle large amounts of data. Out of this convergence came one of the most influential developments in modern librarianship, the machine readable cataloging record, or MARC. MARC was designed so that catalog data could be read by computers, not just by humans. Each record encoded bibliographic information, subject headings, call numbers, and identifiers in a standardized format. That meant two things. First, cataloging could be shared across libraries, reducing duplication of effort, and second, catalogs could scale as collections grew larger and more complex. The first automated library systems ran on mainframe computers and allowed staff and patrons to access catalogs through terminals. Compared to shuffling through thousands of index cards, this was revolutionary. For the first time, a patron could search a growing collection electronically. For librarians, MARC meant efficiency, consistency, and the ability to collaborate across institutions. Consider a practical example. Today, when you search a discovery system like WorldCat, you're not just querying your local library's records, you're tapping into millions of MARC records contributed by libraries worldwide. That's how interlibrary loan works so smoothly. MARC is the invisible backbone making global discovery possible. Of course, MARC itself is now being rethought as linked data models like BB-Frame emerge, but its impact remains undeniable. It was the bridge that carried libraries from the paper card catalog into the digital age. The lesson here is that metadata is infrastructure. Patrons may never see a MARC tag, but without structured metadata, every modern catalog and discovery system would collapse. Libraries couldn't share resources, vendors couldn't integrate platforms, and researchers couldn't find what they need. MARC may not be glamorous, but it's the quiet technology that underpins access for millions. When we step back and look at the survey findings as a whole, a few key lessons emerge. The first is that technology is now embedded in every corner of library work. Whether you're in reference, cataloging, outreach, or instruction, you rely on a wide toolkit of digital tools. The average respondent reported using 27 technologies or skills regularly. That's not specialization, that's versatility. It tells us that modern librarianship demands fluency across platforms, not just mastery of one. Second, the survey shows that librarianship is not a narrow profession. Staff reported working across multiple task areas, often 6 or more. That means the boundaries between traditional roles, cataloger, reference librarian, circulation clerk, are blurrier than ever. Technology has made it easier to cross those boundaries, but it also requires staff to be flexible and willing to learn on the fly. Third, the responses highlight a culture of continuous learning. Many staff not only use dozens of tools but also aspire to learn new skills: coding, data visualization, video editing, 3D printing. This shows an eagerness to adapt, an openness to growth, and a recognition that the profession must evolve alongside society's technology. And finally, the survey reminds us of the patron's perspective. While librarians may focus on catalogs, metadata, and databases, patrons often need help with the basics: printing, email, and device access. Libraries remain essential precisely because they balance high-level information systems with everyday digital literacy support. Think of it this way. The survey confirms what many of you already know from experience. Libraries are both high-tech and low-tech, both advanced and accessible. They are places where you can research a dissertation using specialized databases and, at the same time, help someone set up their very first email account. That dual mission, meeting people wherever they are, is what makes libraries unique. So, what can we learn? That to thrive in this profession, you must be adaptable, versatile, and always ready to learn. Technology will keep changing, but the core values of libraries, access, equity, preservation, and service, will continue to guide how we adopt and use it.